Some quotes don't just belong to a show, they define it. The Andy Griffith Show gave us laughter, wisdom, and a small-town charm that still echoes 6 decades later. But what really made Mayberry unforgettable were the words, the quick one-liners, heartfelt lessons, and timeless bits of country wit that fans still quote to this day. From citizen's arrest to nip it in the bud, these phrases became more than dialogue. They became a part of American culture. Each line carried the warmth, humor, and honesty that made Mayberry feel like home. So today, we're counting down the Andy Griffith Show's most memorable quotes, ranked the sayings that still make us smile, laugh, and sometimes even tear up. Grab your fishing pole, take a walk down to the old courthouse, and let's revisit the words that turned Mayberry into television magic. Before we jump into the countdown, let's ask one question. Why do these quotes still matter after all these years? The answer is simple. They weren't just jokes or clever writing. They were reflections of life, spoken with sincerity. The Andy Griffith Show aired in a time when television wasn't about noise or spectacle, it was about people. Every quote, whether funny, wise, or heartfelt, came from genuine characters we believed in. When Andy gave advice to Opie, it felt like something your own father might say. When Barney shouted, "Nip it in the bud," you could hear every overconfident friend you've ever known. And when Gomer cried, "Citizen's arrest," it reminded us that small-town chaos could still be harmless and hilarious. These lines stuck because they carried truth wrapped in humor. They were simple enough to quote, but deep enough to feel. The writers, men like Everett Greenbaum and Jim Fritzell, knew how to blend country wit with timeless values. And the cast, especially Andy and Don Knotts, delivered those words with such heart that they became part of our cultural language. That's why, 6 decades later, fans still quote these lines at work, at home, even at family dinners. They're not just echoes from an old sitcom, they're part of who we are. Let's kick off our countdown with the lines that set the tone for Mayberry's unique blend of humor and heart quotes that still make fans chuckle no matter how many times they've heard them. 20. Citizen's arrest, citizen's arrest. It's impossible to forget Gomer Pyle shouting this at Barney after catching him breaking a traffic law. That perfect reversal, the rule follower caught red-handed, summed up the show's small-town irony in just 2 words. You beat everything. You know that Andy's gentle, half-exasperated way of putting Barney back in his place. It wasn't harsh, it was pure Southern grace. 18. Boy, giraffes are selfish. Leave it to Barney to turn a random animal observation into twisted logic. It's a line so absurd that it became iconic precisely because it makes no sense. 17. Ernest T. Bass. I'm a little mean, but I make up for it by being real healthy. Ernest T. delivered chaos with poetry. That sentence captured his wild, unpredictable energy, half menace, half charm. 16. I think he's a nut. Barney's deadpan diagnosis of anyone he didn't understand, especially if they were smarter than him. 15. Andy to Opie. Do a good day's work and act like somebody. Not just advice for a TV son, it's a life lesson still worth repeating. 14. Charlene Darling. That one makes me cry. Every time the Darlings played a tune, Charlene's soft-spoken line reminded us how music and emotion were woven into Mayberry's soul. 13. Briscoe Darling Man's entitled to his opinion. Simple, fair, and timeless, a line that fits just as well at a kitchen table as it did in a mountain cabin. 12. You're not talking to a jerk, you know? Barney's attempt to defend his dignity, usually right before proving himself wrong. 11. Daphne, one of the fun girls. Hello. Doll, playful, mischievous, and flirtatious. This one line turned a guest appearance into legend. Every one of these lines painted a little piece of Mayberry kind, quirky, and endlessly human. Now we're stepping into the golden tier, the quotes that turned The Andy Griffith Show from a simple sitcom into a permanent part of American culture. These lines weren't just funny, they became sayings, still quoted by fans who weren't even born when the show first aired. 10. Briscoe darling. We thought about killing him. Kind of hated to go that far. Leave it to the mountain folks to mix menace with hospitality. It's dark humor. Sure, but spoken with that Mayberry innocence that made it hilarious instead of harsh. 9. Barney Fife. It's therapeutic, a single misused word that became a masterclass in malapropisms. Don Knotts could turn a linguistic mistake into comedy gold, and he did it with total sincerity. 8. Now you're gonna Glenn Ford, it all over town. Barney comparing himself to Hollywood action heroes was priceless. He couldn't be one, so he talked like one. That gap between ego and reality was where the laughs lived. 7. I like to wait for the official verification. A perfect example of Mayberry logic, cautious, overly proper, and hilariously unnecessary. Barney could never just believe something. He needed paperwork. 6. $6 a week. And what do I get? Heartaches. Barney's eternal complaint: underpaid, overworked, and tragically self-unaware. It's every office worker's anthem, wrapped in a deputy's badge. 5. Don't make a big Mage out of it. Another beautiful Barney blunder. He meant mess. But Mage came out instead. The audience roared, and the writers took note. Barney's mistakes were Mayberry's treasure. 4. Gomer pile Shazam simple, pure, and contagious. Gomer's joyful exclamation captured the wonder of small-town discovery and became his signature word for years to come. 3. Barney Fife. Real big, 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 big. When Barney described something as real big, you knew it probably wasn't. His tendency to exaggerate even the smallest events turned routine days into epic sagas, at least in his mind. 2. Andy Taylor. Just call the man. A line so wise and relatable it still fits today. Whenever Barney or anyone tried to fix something themselves and made it worse, Andy's calm advice summed it all up. Sometimes, you just need to call the professional. Each of these lines captured a different side of Mayberry humor: humility, exaggeration, and heart. Together, they formed a rhythm that still feels familiar, like the easy drawl of an old friend. And now, we've reached the crown jewel of Mayberry, the quote that rose above all others. 3 little words that every fan, young or old, can hear in Barney Fife's unmistakable voice: nip it in the bud. This wasn't just a catchphrase, it was a philosophy, delivered with comic perfection. Every time trouble began to brew, Barney would march in, chest puffed out, finger wagging, and declare that the only solution was to nip it in the bud. He used it for everything: gossip, kids fighting, small-town disputes. No problem was too small for his self-appointed brand of justice. The brilliance of this line lies in its duality. On paper, it's good advice: stop problems before they grow. But in Barney's hands, it became a parody of overreaction. He didn't just want to solve problems, he wanted to make a production out of them. His exaggerated authority and flustered urgency made the phrase instantly funny, yet strangely meaningful. Don Knotts delivered it with the rhythm of a sermon and the panic of a man barely holding things together. The phrase became his verbal badge of honor, proof of his eternal readiness even if he didn't quite know what he was ready for. Decades later, nip it in the bud has left the show and entered the American lexicon. You'll hear it in offices, schools, even in everyday conversation, often with a knowing grin, a nod to Mayberry's favorite deputy. Because when it comes to handling chaos, we all have a little bit of Barney Fife in us, ready to nip it in the bud, even when we probably shouldn't. Before we wrap up, Let's give some love to the honorable mentions, the one-liners and quick remarks that didn't make the top 10 but still live rent-free in every fan's mind. They're the quiet gems of the Andy Griffith Show, simple, silly, and unforgettable. I ain't got time to stand around here and discuss trivial trivialities. Leave it to Barney to turn impatience into poetry. The double trivial says everything about his character: dramatic, overconfident, and completely unaware of how funny he is. Those hamburgers are ruined kerosene. Few exchanges capture Mayberry's deadpan humor like Floyd the barber discovering the reason behind a terrible lunch. It's absurd, dry, and perfect. If you flew a quail through this room, he wouldn't get out alive. Barney's version of a tough guy boasts the kind of exaggerated confidence that collapses under reality. A dog's nothing but a dog. Spoken with pure Mayberry simplicity. It's the kind of line that sounds obvious, but somehow still manages to feel profound, especially in Andy's calm, fatherly tone. Here at The Rock, we have two basic rules. When Barney delivered this speech, acting like Mayberry's tiny jail was Alcatraz, it was pure comedy gold. He couldn't help turning every mundane duty into a dramatic monologue. And of course, the darlings always bringing mountain music and dry one-liners that made even the quiet moments hum with life. Every quote, every little phrase, gave Mayberry texture, a town full of oddballs and heart, where everyone spoke their own unique language of laughter. These honorable mentions remind us that the Andy Griffith Show didn't need shock value or fancy effects to be funny. It just needed good writing, great timing, and a little touch of humanity. 60 years later, the Andy Griffith Show still has something that modern television rarely captures: heart. The humor wasn't about punchlines or big setups. It was about people, ordinary folks, trying, failing, laughing, and learning together. That's why these quotes have lasted so long. They weren't written just to make you laugh once. They were written to stick with you. Each line, from citizen's arrest to nip it in the bud, carries a piece of small-town America that never fades. They remind us of simpler times, when lessons were taught with kindness, mistakes were forgiven with a smile, and laughter came from the quirks of human nature, not at its expense. Barney's clumsy wisdom, Andy's quiet strength, Gomer's innocence, and the darling's charm, they all combined into something that felt real, even when it was funny. That's the magic of Mayberry. Every joke carried warmth, and every moment, no matter how silly, had a heartbeat behind it. And now, we'd love to hear from you. Which line from the Andy Griffith Show is your favorite? Which one do you still find yourself quoting all these years later? Tell us in the comments below, because the Mayberry might be off the air, but its spirit still lives on in every laugh, every memory, and every nip it in the bud we share. If you loved this trip down memory lane, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more deep dives into the timeless moments that shaped classic television. Up next, we'll revisit the funniest Andy and Barney pranks ever pulled in Mayberry. Because in Mayberry, the stories never end, they just get funnier every time you tell them.